I'm of the generation where now a lot of my peers have their own restaurants and they're all doing so amazing, but we're also probably not the new kids on the block anymore, which is it's kind of a bit scary. But that's also really exciting for me to not know any of these people and go think, oh, wow, like who is this person? What are they doing? And seeing the fresh ideas that are coming out.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The summer series of Deep in the Weeds continues today, and we have the amazing Kylie Javiar Ashton on today's show. Kylie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. We've caught up with you a couple of times, and with the closure of Mamafuku and all sorts of things like that. How are things at the moment? What are you up to?
Yeah, good. I'm kind of working on a few different things. Still doing my tie-dye business, working in learning and development now, which has been really interesting part of my journey. Yeah, still, in the hospitality sector. But yeah, trying to, I guess, focus on other people's development and wanting to really push our industry forward. So it's kind of exciting and very different, but I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I don't know that I'll ever be able to leave the food industry or hospitality industry because it's, so special to me. But it is, I know that everyone's been doing it. It's been a really hard few years, but it feels like we're kind of coming out the other end of it. I don't want to jinx it, but it definitely feels like there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel, which is really lovely.
Well, you were at the helm of a restaurant that was a real destination, not just for Australians, but people would fly into Australia to come to your restaurant. What about yourself? Have you done a lot of travelling to go specifically to destinations? Do you have any stories of those?
Yeah, look, I think after I kind of got into hospitality, that's the center of all of my travel. I was actually kind of thinking back, of trips that I've done, and it's all really been centered around food. So even our honeymoon, for example, Luke and I got married 10 years ago, and the year after we got married, we went on a big honeymoon, basically traveled the world for 4 weeks and eating and drinking, and yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Tell us where you went, and is there any sort of meals or moments that really stood out for you?
Yeah, look, I think our first stop was LA, and I think there was this one moment where we got to stay at Chateau Marmont for a night, which was pretty incredible. And, just drinking champagne and having something simple like a cheese board, but just sitting in this incredible place that has so much history was pretty special. We went to 11 Madison Park, where it was just, I was, excuse me, kind of still pretty jet lagged, quite drunk because, the servings of alcohol. I remember having a Negroni for a pre-dinner drink and realizing, oh man, this is not an Australian Negroni. An American Negroni is a double Negroni. And before we even got into the meal, I was feeling pretty tipsy. Don't remember the second half really, but again, pretty incredible. We got to go to Blue Hills at Stone Barn. We went to the MAD Festival in Copenhagen as part of our honeymoon, then to Japan. So it was just all centered around food and I guess the people that, inspire us when it does come to food. So I felt very fortunate to have been able to, for Luke and I to kind of share that experience, but also to just eat at these really incredible restaurants all around the world. That's our life. We eat and drink. And so our honeymoon was all about that. It was, really special.
11 Madison Park is an extraordinary experience. So you mentioned Dan Barber's place as well. We've had him on the podcast. Can you take us through that experience? And because it's so different to 11 Madison Park.
Oh, yeah. And so we had to catch the train to Stone Barns. I think that's what it's called. Oh my gosh, it's like 10 years ago now. But it's beautiful because it's like this whole property. And I remember us being one of the first tables that sat. So it was like still daylight. And as we progressed through the meal, you could see like the dining room filling up and just that atmosphere really shifted and changed. And at one point in the meal, towards the beginning, they kind of were going to do a bread course later on. So we got to choose like the grains that we wanted within the bread, and then they were going to go mill them. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And then I think sort of halfway through the meal, we got invited to sit out in this tiny little barn. It was just Luke and I, and it overlooked all of the fields and the gardens. It was just the two of us. It was so incredible. I was just like, I was blown away because it was just this really intimate opportunity for us to be like in our own little world. And we had a few courses out there, and then we went back onto the patio and had our desserts there. And it was, by that time, it was dark, and it was just really special. There was like this progression through the meal, but it didn't feel, I don't know, it didn't feel overly choreographed. It felt very natural, and it was really, really special to be able to be in that place. And, you know, just in the evening, like watching the dining room fill up and go from being bright and light and the sun going down to then having like these really intimate moments. It was, yeah, really special.
You spend a lot of time working with Paul Carmichael, whose heritage goes back to the Caribbean. You visited his mum, didn't you, and shared some food with her?
Yeah, and I would have to say that's probably on my, like, sort of one of the top experiences that I've ever had. If I was to think about travel and just being in another place, I think that at that point, Paul and I had probably been working together for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, probably, yeah. So, like, you know, we hit it off right from the beginning, but I think that trip really solidified our friendship, our connection. You know, we really became family through that trip. I think being able to spend time with his family, and it just helped me understand Paul, but it also gave me like this connection to the Caribbean culture, food, the place. Like, it is probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And just the hospitality that his family showed myself and Luke was so, so special. Like, my family is very similar. You know, we're very open and we just welcome people in. And I just felt that sense of like I belonged there. His mom cooked us all these things that I had reference to through the restaurant, but she cooked me like her version, like the OG version. And I think that just, you know, I feel this real affinity to Barbados and to the Caribbean through that experience, because I felt so welcomed and accepted, and that was just a really special feeling. And it gave me so much more drive coming back, because I felt a real responsibility to represent the food, the culture, the people in a way that would really honour them, but do that experience justice. Because, yeah, I don't know, it really, I guess it changed me as a person. It helped me to develop ways, you know, of understanding in a completely different way.
Paul's food is absolutely spectacular, and every meal that I ever had there was just one that I've never forgotten. But to go back to the source, and which is, you know, his inspiration for his creation, was there any sort of dish that really resonated with you, or ingredients that his mum prepared?
Actually, there's this breakfast dish, and so there's this bread called a bake, which is actually fried, but it's a coconut bake made with coconut. So it's not actually sweet. Well, there is a little bit of sweetness to it, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's like very, very sweet. And then she makes like this salted cod, which she fried and had with these coconut bakes. And it was so good. And I know it was one of Paul's favorite dishes growing up, but it was quite funny because his mum was cooking his breakfast. I took a photo of her, sent it to Paul while we were there, and he was like, I know exactly what she's making from the way she's like standing over the pan. You're having coconut bakes and salted fish for breakfast. He's like, that is my favorite thing in the whole world. And it was just like, obviously for him, he just knew exactly what was happening. And it's quite funny how, food and those memories can just bring you back in an instant, like to a different time and different place. So that was, and it's so simple, but that's something that it really sticks in my mind because just the sweet and the salty, the crunch, the way that it was just so simple. But I think that that's what the best food is. It's simplicity that's just done so well, and you can't make things simply and well without confidence and the experience to do so, I don't think, because it's all about balance and really nailing all of those components that makes it so good.
You mentioned the similarities between the families and that genuine hospitality that your own family has. You've got Filipino heritage. Is there any sort of dishes or moments that you've had exploring that for yourself?
What, like Filipino food, do you mean? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up, like I'm really lucky. I'm part of a huge family, and so food is the center of our world. I think that like if I was thinking about a really special time and food for me, there's this experience, I would say, I call it, in Filipino food, which is called a boodle fight. And basically it's a communal dining experience where you just lay banana leaves all over the table and everybody gathers around, and then all of the rice, there's no plates or cutlery. All of the rice, there's normally like fried and fresh seafood and dishes. It all gets kind of like dumped into the middle of the table, or arranged. I shouldn't say dumped. It's normally like arranged very nicely to, and then everybody kind of just sits around the table and eats with their hands. And, like by the end of it, there's just a bit of carnage, but also just like a bunch of like seafood shells and it's very, I don't know, it's so visceral because you're eating with your hands, you're with it. Yeah, and it's really cool. Like I was actually looking at the etymology of like why is it called boodle fight, but I think it comes back from because Philippines has very strong military ties with the US, and boodle is kind of like booty. So like when they had sweets and contraband, I guess, given to the military, like the alcohol, they'd put it all into the middle of the table and everyone would fight to like get the sweet treats and stuff that they weren't normally supposed to have. So it came from that, where you just kind of put everything in the middle and it's a bit of a free for all. But the Filipinos have adapted it into like this whole eating experience. And we did it once at my mum's house with my cousins, and it wasn't something that we'd ever done before. And I was like, this is amazing. Like there's no washing up because there's no plates. It's just like you just throw the banana leaves out afterwards and everyone keeps on having a great time. So yeah, that's a pretty incredible experience, I think, in terms of Filipino culture.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague Plums, handpicked for you.
So the eating experience of our plums is sweet. That's a primary driver. It's got to be sweet, but it's also got to have enough acid, because the mix of acid and sugar is what gives fruit its flavour. And in a plum, it tends to be slightly higher acidity. And then a really nice, full, not dry, but juicy explosion of juice into your mouth as you bite into it. That's nirvana for us in terms of a plum.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
Summer's such a celebration of food as well. Is there any sort of food or feasts that remind you of summer?
I have a crustacean allergy, but prawns is like the first thing that comes to my mind. Well, I don't have, I struggle with crustaceans. It's not necessarily an allergy, but that kind of reminds me of growing up. Like, I think seafood in Australia is pretty synonymous with summer and even Christmas, you know. But growing up, my dad used to go to the markets every Saturday, and particularly in summer, we would just have a big seafood cook up. Like, he'd normally get mud crabs and just have rice with that on a weekend. Probably why I'm intolerant to crustaceans now, because I ate them so much growing up.
Overdosed.
I overdosed. But yeah, that's probably, you know, I think we're so lucky to have that incredible produce in Australia. And that to me is really like, that is what summer is to me. Eating with your hands, whether it's, you know, prawns at the beach or like oysters, being outside. Hopefully this year we'll get some good weather. But to me, like, and growing up, if I was to think about summer, that's it.
The evolution of the culinary landscape has been extraordinary in Australia, particularly the last 10 years, and you've been a huge part of that. But what's your favourite thing going on in food in Australia at the moment?
That's a really tough one. I think it was really hard after COVID. I was just, you know, like, I sort of had to turn off a lot of being so entrenched in the food industry, because it really got me down, to be honest. And I think I'm kind of starting to feel okay enough to, like, you know, venture out a little bit more and be, I don't know, invested in the industry. I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, like, I felt like I just wanted to protect myself a little bit, because everything I read, I just felt it made me feel a little bit depressed, to be honest. And so seeing more good news stories, I think, is really great. The exciting thing is that we're open. Like, I know that we've kind of moved on from COVID, and it feels like people are trying to forget that it even happened, which I totally get. But I think that those scars still run so deep, and just the fact that people are open, we're seeing some positivity. You know, it's still really hard, but I'm trying to slowly dip my toes in a little bit more at a time and yeah, feel more positive. But look, I see so many great things happening. And this new generation of people that I don't really know, you know, I guess, like, I'm of the generation where now a lot of my peers have their own restaurants and they're all doing so amazing, but we're also probably not the new kids on the block anymore, which is, it's kind of a bit scary. But that's also really exciting for me to not know any of these people and go think, oh, wow, like, who is this person? What are they doing? And seeing the fresh ideas that are coming out. But I guess also the celebration of different cultures, and people, I think, are seeking out more than just your typical European cuisines that we're all so familiar with. And even the standard, say, you know, I think Australians are pretty up to speed with what's going on in a lot of Asian countries, but even stuff like Korean food, say, for example, which wasn't as popular 2 or 3 years ago, is, like, I think, really having a moment. And hopefully, I'm really hoping Filipino food is right around the corner too. Actually, you've got an amazing Filipino restaurant in Canberra called Lolo and Lola's. I don't know if you've ever been, but you've got to go.
I have been. It's fantastic. I agree.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's meant to be our secret little place, Kylie.
Oh, I'm so
broadcasting
sorry.
it to the nation.
Don't go there. It's amazing.
Don't go there. You'll love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I went there and I had, like, sinigang is my mum's signature dish. And you know when somebody has another version of your mum's signature dish, you're like really skeptical. I had this, I think it was a beef and watermelon sinigang there, and it was, oh my God. I was surprised at myself and a little bit shocked that I loved this version of sinigang so much. And Kim, who's one of the owners, gave me the recipe, but I'm not even game enough to try it because it was so good. It was so, so, so good. And for me to say anybody else's sinigang is as good as my mom's is pretty like, I don't know, that feels sacrilegious to me. So yeah, I think it was like a special, and I don't know if she'll ever make it again, but if she does, you need to go try it.
Absolutely. Well, Kylie, as ever, it's amazing to catch up with you, and it's very exciting to hear that you're part of influencing the next generation, and you got your toes back in the water in hospitality because you're an absolute legend. Have a great summer, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you. You too.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.